Hey, everybody, this is Matt Rogers. Thanks for coming back to Significant Coaching. And I've got an unbelievably good guest for you today. But before I get into our guest and my guest, I want to make sure I touch on the fact that this was Super Bowl week. The Super Bowl was this past Sunday. It was a great game. I thought the coaching was top level, what you would expect out of a Super Bowl. And we got really special performances out of the defense. I don't think everybody expected the defenses to really rise and shine. But at the end of the day, we saw the greatness of Mr. Patrick Mahomes and that special relationship he has with Andy Reid and that coaching staff, and what that coaching staff has been able to provide Patrick to give him the confidence to be him. And oh man, is he something special to watch. And against just a high level 49ers defense. And you saw greatness on the other side too, with Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and what that defense did and what that offense did. So just a great, great game. I, I'm calling this my Super Bowl special episode because we've got a great NFL player who's now a coach on the episode today, Ryan Kerrigan. But before I get into Ryan's background and his history and his great career as an NFL player, I want to get back to the Super Bowl because my wife and we enjoy the game, but we're like most people that watch. We dig the commercials and the halftime show just as much as we like the game oftentimes. And I'm gonna take a step back a little bit and be a little serious here for a second, because there were a number of commercials that the NFL put out this year during the Super Bowl that I thought were really significant and really hit my heart. And the impetus of the commercials was about bullying, and to hear these NFL players sincerely talk about bullying and the negativity of it and how it affects kids. Um, Maybe it didn't have that same impact on you, but it had a major impact on me because, I was one of those kids that did get bullied a little bit in high school. I remembered how just turning the corner and not sure if that guy that had it out for me was going to be around the corner and do something to me that I didn't want done to me. And And luckily for me, I had a dad and still have a dad um, that grew up real small. My dad was probably 5'4", 5'5" until he was a senior in high school, and he ended up being about 6 feet tall. But he got bullied a ton because he was so little. And this was the 1950s when it was just kind of allowed to be bullied. And my childhood, when my dad was an adult and my dad, in his 30s and 40s, I never saw my dad back down to anybody. you know um, he could take over a conversation with kindness, but if anybody wanted to step out of line with him, he just didn't take it. So I learned that lesson really young, watching my dad, that I wasn't going to let anybody push me around. And no matter how scary those bullies were in high school and a little bit in college, my first year or two, um, I always knew that no matter what anybody did to me or tried to do to me, I was going to stand up for myself. And anybody that I saw was getting bullied, I was going to stand up for them. And that was always been a big part of my life as a teacher, as a coach. And I see it so much now with the LGBTQ community, and it hits my heart that what those kids have to go through, and minority students and kids that have come here from another place and maybe they have an accent or don't speak the language, or like my dad and my brothers, they were really small. They just didn't hit their growth spurts till later in life. So um, I wanted to just mention that, how thankful I was that the NFL is making that a priority, and how proud I was to see those NFL players talk with such sincerity and honesty about bullying. And I just thought it was a great message. And I hope we all, on the other side of it, we're talking to our kids about bullying and the effect that being the big kid can have on those little kids, or being the cocky kid or the athlete, that those non-athletes kind of can fear you because you've got your group, you've got your brothers, you've got your sisters on the team. You've got that group, that net of protection. And those kids that aren't on a team and aren't athletes, they don't have that. So how important it is when you're an athlete to stand up for those kids and make sure they know they've got a friend and somebody that's there to have their back. So I wanted to touch on that just a little bit. I hope that means something to you. I hope you take 5 minutes and talk to your kids about it. If you're a high school kid or a college kid, I hope you take 5 minutes and just ponder that and the impact that you have on others. And I hope you do something good with it. Okay. Shifting gears here, I want to talk about the great Ryan Kerrigan. And I'm going to talk about his career, and then I'm going to talk about his character. Ryan played in the NFL for 10 years, 8 straight years. He had 7.5 sacks or more. Not many guys can say that in the history of the NFL. 4 seasons with 11 plus sacks. And he's number 51 all time in the history of the NFL. We're talking 50 years of the NFL. He's number 51 all time with 95.5 sacks. Now, what's crazy about that number is he did it in 10 years. There's guys that played in the NFL for 14, 15, 16 years that don't have that many sacks. And guys that are ahead of him that got 3, 4, 5 extra seasons. So we're talking about more sacks than Steve McMichael, who's going into the Hall of Fame, one of my favorite Bears of all time. Willie McGinnis, the great Patriot, and then Howie Long, who we all watch on Fox every Sunday, NFL Fox, one of the best Raiders of all time. Ryan has more sacks than all 3 of those guys. So he was on the 2011 NFL All-Rookie team. He went to 4 Pro Bowls, and he was a 3-time first-team All-Pro, as designated by the writers and voted on by the NFL writers. So just a great career. Now, put all that aside, and I'm not bringing you an NFL player today when you're listening to this, whether it's morning, whether you're on a treadmill, whether you're in your car. What you're getting is someone who's a leader, okay? This is a dad of about to be 4 kids. He's been married for a long time. And if you met Ryan out in the street, okay, if you were on a main street somewhere and you saw an old truck pull up and you saw this 6'4" guy get out of it, you might think, that must be the local plumber. That must be the local electric lineman. That might be one of the local firemen, because he doesn't carry himself like an NFL superstar. He carries himself like that blue collar guy that we all know as a neighbor, the guy next door. He's the guy that if you need help with something, he's going to come over and help you with it. And he's just a really genuine human being. So I was really thankful to have this conversation, because I've known Ryan through my nephew, Adam Brockman, who we're going to talk about at the end of the episode. He and Adam played football at Purdue University together, and they became really close. They became best buds and lived together, and they were in each other's weddings. So I've got to really know Ryan from afar through my nephew. So to get to spend some quality time with him today was really, really profound for me. You'll hear in my voice, it gets a little high because I'm so giddy to talk to him. Not because he's a former NFL player and he's a present NFL coach, but just because I knew what I was getting. I knew I was getting a really genuine human being with the highest of character. And he would say, no, Matt, no, I'm just a normal guy. He is just a normal guy, but the gifts he's been given in this world, he has maximized them, and he will continue to maximize them. And really, really proud to know that there's a guy in this world that's a role model like him. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, thanks for listening to me a little bit and letting me go off on a tangent a little bit, but enjoy the great Ryan Kerrigan. Ryan, it's so good to see you. You've been out of the game now for a couple of years. When you hear guys call you coach, what does that do to your senses now that you're no longer a player and now you're leading a group of men? What does that do for you?
I'm getting more used to it. I've initially my first year when people were calling me that, I kind of would, do a double take, but I'm more used to it now, being 2 years removed from the game. But that first year, it was a little something when
A
I
little
when I was there.
challenging. Yeah. You got two kids, you got a third one on the way any second now. Is when you hear coach and you hear daddy, is there some things that get you excited when you hear those two words? Are there some
I mean,
similarities?
they both are exciting in different ways. It's whenever I hear my daughters, yelling for me, it's, I'm gonna get really excited. Okay, what do they want? And then same as when a player's, hey coach, it's like, okay, how can I help you? It's kind of, how can I help you either way?
Right,
It's just,
right,
one, you're helping a grown man, the other you're helping a little girl.
right. Well, I've got an 11 and a 14-year-old, but I remember the days when I had real little ones and I'd come home from a game or a practice and, you know, if we lost or we won, when I heard daddy when I walked through the door and I had somebody running at me with a big smile on their face, all that emotion that I was bringing home kind of left me. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. I remember it was my ninth season playing, and it was the first year that I was a dad. And I remember we had a tough loss against the Cowboys, and I was pretty mad, coming to the parking lot, and it was really, really heated, wanted to get going. And then my wife hands me my daughter, and it's like instantly I was just like, oh, okay, like life life is still good, things are still great. And so they definitely bring a element of perspective, and especially as I've made the transition to coaching, they bring a huge, reprieve every time that I'm able to interact with them, whether it's after a win or a loss.
I took a break from coaching for about 10 years. I helped coaches and kind of was a consultant with programs, but I'm finding now as a dad 10 years later getting back into coaching, I'm still intense as I ever was, but I'm finding that um, the joys last a little longer and the frustrations leave me a little bit faster. Do you feel that too? Are you starting to sense that?
I'm starting to sense that for sure. I mean, you definitely, especially when it comes to the kids, you hang on to the good moments, outlast any temper tantrum, any fit they threw. It's like that fit goes out the window the second they say something sweet to you. So it's
Yeah.
it's definitely cool.
Well, that's great. That's really great. I'm really excited for you. And you guys are going to be playing zone now. Are you ready to play zone?
Well, this is actually number four.
Oh, is this four?
Yeah,
I
we
thought
so
this was
we're
three. Oh, you got fourth coming.
yeah, so we've been playing zone, and I will say, going from man to zone that was a challenge. I mean, it
Yeah,
definitely was. My wife and I always say going from 0 to 1 was rocks your world like no other.
right.
Then 1 to 2 for us wasn't so bad. 2 to 3 was pretty damn tough. It was a lot, and so I guess we'll see what number four brings.
That's great. I'm happy for you. You used the word transition, so I really want to talk about that because that's a big part of why I wanted to talk to you. I was a college player, and then I went right into coaching. So I was coaching college kids at 23 years old. You've had an unbelievable all pro career. You're an adult, you're a dad. How was that going from, and I know you had that break where you went and played 1 year away from the Redskins and the Commanders, but what was that like going from that all pro guy? Now you're coaching some of those guys that you played with. What was that like?
It was definitely interesting at the start because you're like, holy cow, I played with these guys. A lot of these guys were my teammates that I played with multiple years. But I think, as like anything, as time went on and as I got more comfortable in my role, as the guys got more comfortable hearing me in a coaching role, I think we all got more comfortable, and they all know that that I want the best for them. That when I'm telling them something, it's because I think it's going to help them play better. That it's going to help further their careers and ultimately help them be able to get the most they can out of the NFL. And
Right.
so, it definitely was, like anything, whenever you're going from one realm of life to another, there's always an adjustment period, and there certainly was. But now that I've got 2 years under my belt, I'm just hoping I can take this thing as far as I can.
For me, when I went from high school, when I went from playing to coaching, it was almost within 6 to 12 months. All of a sudden, I felt like I was a better player. I felt like, and I know that's hard on football. For basketball, I was still playing open gym. I was still messing around, but it was like a year or two into my coaching, I was like, gosh, my brain expanded to the point where I started to learn the game like I didn't learn it as a player. All of a sudden, I was like, why didn't I understand this better when I was playing? Are you feeling some of that?
My gosh, you're reading my mind. I mean, that's exactly what I feel. I'm like I watch things now and I'm like, damn it. Like if I would have known this, as a player, gosh, like how much more productive could I have been? And, how much better could I have been? Because I mean, naturally as a coach, you put in more hours, you put in, more film study. So you're able to see things, you're able to see the bigger picture better. And I think just if I had the knowledge that I have now as a coach, I think as a player, I could have, I think about that often. Damn, that'd be pretty cool.
You watch film differently too, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, especially as a guy that played on the line of scrimmage, I was
Right.
always focused on beating a guy.
Right.
And then now as a coach, you're looking at things from a schematic standpoint, not so much a personnel, but okay, what is this scheme trying to do? And so understanding the schematics of things better, I think has allowed me to see the game, in a faster way.
That's the hardest thing for me to teach because I want my guys to understand that scheme. I want them to understand everybody's position because once you understand what that guy on the other end's doing, what your nose tackle, what your three positions doing, what your linebackers doing, all of a sudden your brain works differently, and you understand the lines, you understand the angles. Have you found yourself teaching that
Yeah.
on that understanding of all the parts?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think it's important to be able to communicate that to the guys too, because we do have some pretty bright guys in our group that they want to know, okay, hey, why are we doing this on this play but doing this on another play? And it's like, okay, well, because so and so has to do this on this play, and so is responsible for this on the other play. And so it's good to be able to bring the understanding of the entire picture to the guys.
In the NFL, it's so crazy. You guys have your draft, your trade deadline, and you lost two huge pieces within 24 hours. And then I was so impressed. I thought your defense continued to really, you had to make some changes. You went through some struggles, but you guys really had some great games even after you lost those two big pieces. What's that like when in the middle of a season, you've been coaching these guys, you had a scheme with these guys, and all of a sudden it gets blown up?
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge, and it was a challenge. I mean, you're talking about one guy who defensive rookie of the year a couple years back, and Chase Young. You're talking about Montez Sweat, who is just a player that just continued to ascend, throughout his career, but then especially in the early part of this past season. And so it definitely is a challenge when you lose very very quality players like that. But I got to give it credit to our guys that stepped up, that whose roles expanded once Sweat and Chase were traded. Casey, James, FA, KJ, Andre, all those guys really worked hard. Jalen, because they knew, and they also, because they saw it as an opportunity, and rightfully so. They weren't seeing it as, oh no, we traded these guys. They were thinking, no, okay, here's my opportunity. Let me go seize it. And I'm proud of them for looking at it that way, because that's how you have to look at it as a player.
Absolutely. That's so good to hear. These guys are making big bucks. And the fact that they looked at this and said, man, I'm not going to let this season die. I'm not going to look at it the way maybe the GM's looking at a rebuild. I'm going to attack this and attack my opportunity. I'm a big Bears fan. So when Montez came over for us, the word multiplier has been used just ad nauseum because he changed how that Bears defense flowed and the intensity of it. And you were that guy. You don't know this, you probably don't remember this, but I saw you play live at Purdue a number of times. I saw you play at Notre Dame, and I was always impressed with you. And then to see what you did when you moved on to Washington, you were that multiplier. What does that mean when you hear that word as a player and as a coach? What does that ring a bell for you?
Well, it means a lot to hear you reference me in that context, and but it definitely, when you want to be that as a player and you want that as a coach, you want a guy that's going to pick up the level of play of everybody else around him, and certainly Sweat was able to do that once the last half of the season when he went to Chicago. And I'm proud of him for the way that he's just continued to ascend, because he's a great person and phenomenal talent who's really starting to materialize in his talent. But that's what you want. Like I said, that's what you want to be as a player. You want to be somebody that coaches look at and say, this guy is making our entire team better, our entire defense better, and we need more guys like him.
What when you were a player, if you knew you could get to the quarterback and you knew you could rush that quarterback and change what they wanted to do, what did that do to your secondary when they knew that maybe they could press a little bit harder right from the stretch because they knew you had a chance to get into the quarterback? Are those conversations happening?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, that was one of the things I remember when we had signed Josh Norman back in 2016, when he left Carolina. And that was one of the first things him and I talked about. We're like, hey, you and I are going to make each other better, and we're going to make this
Right.
defense better because of, you're going to, I'm going to be able to help get that, help get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quick. So you're not, back there in coverage all day, and you're going to be able to lock this receiver down so that I can have a little extra time to get to the quarterback. And so, it's definitely, it's one of the many football analogies and cliches that are always said, but rush and coverage, working together, it's legit. Like if you have a good pass rush, that makes your secondary look better. If you have a good secondary, it makes your pass rush look better. So it all has to work together.
I love that. And I find as a basketball coach, I use football analogies more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many similarities, but there's so many different levels to football than basketball that I'm able to articulate that to these guys. How many of the guys that are you coaching were a multi-sport athlete? They played some basketball, or they weren't just football players. Do you see that? Because I know you were a 3-sport guy.
Yeah, we have a lot of them. That's a big thing. I mean, you see a lot of well-rounded athletes in the NFL. Guys that, whether it's basketball, they ran track and field. Some of them, played baseball. There's a lot of guys in the National Football League that have been drafted in the Major League Baseball draft. And so, I mean, you look at Russell Wilson, I know is a guy that, was, pretty darn good baseball player. But yeah, it definitely helps with guys overall, athletic profiles if they're able to play more sports, when they're young. And you can see that translate as they get older and climb into college and then into the National Football League.
Yeah, so many families come to me and ask me that question. Should we focus on that one sport? And I always go, no. If your kid loves playing, let them play. They're going to be healthier. They're going to be less injury prone. They're going to play their sport longer, right?
Yeah, I mean and two, just from like, I guess an emotional standpoint, like you only get to play certain sports like for a certain part of your life. Like you can't go back and say, oh, I wish, you can't go back when you're in college and say, oh darn, I should have played, high school baseball. Oh darn, I should have played high school basketball. It's like you only got, play what you can while you can, because they're the opportunities that you have to seize during the lifetime of them.
That's great. I think kids that are 15, 16 years old and parents that are raising those kids need to look at somebody like you as an all-pro NFL player. You had such a great high school career in multiple sports. You had fun. You were a tight end. Do you think if you had to go back and keep your weight down and they didn't put all the weight on you, do you think you could have played some tight end in the NFL?
I don't know. I just know that there was some conversation when I initially got to Purdue of, will I play tight end? Will I play defensive end? And I got put with defensive line, and I was fine with that because I was better with that and I was more natural at that. I only played 2 years of tight end in high school. But I just remember it was our second game of the year, my freshman year, and our tight end, all-American guy, gets just absolutely annihilated by this defensive back trying to catch it, a little seam ball. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I'm so glad I played defensive end and not tight end. Like, thank goodness. And my mom actually said the same thing to me after the game. She's like, "So glad you playing defensive end?" I'm like, "Yes, very glad I'm playing the end."
You always want to be the hitter and not the guy getting hit if you could do it.
Oh, you're so exposed when you're a tight end, and so that was all the answer I needed was that big hit.
That's great. That's great. Hey, I know you're going through a transition. I said I'm a Bears fan, so I grew up watching your former coach playing for the Bears, and I
Mm-hmm.
loved watching him play. And I know he's a good man, and it's always hard for me to see good people, lose their job, and that means everybody underneath them often is in flux now too, and your life is in. I've been really excited these last couple of weeks to see a couple of your peers, guys that you played with at an all-pro level and played against, Jared Mayo, Antonio Pierce, getting those jobs as young coaches. That's really exciting for me. Does that motivate you for a guy that's, just 1 year of coaching? Does that get you excited about where maybe your career could go?
Yeah, hell yeah, it does. I mean, I want, I'm like I said at the start of this, I want to take this thing as far as I can. I mean, I love football. There's nothing like playing football, but coaching's that next
Yeah,
next step, and it's awesome to still be involved in the game competitively. And I feel like I have a lot to give to the game still, and I want to be able to give it. And it is really cool to see Antonio Pierce, Gerard Mayo, D'Amico Ryan's, down
yeah,
he's had an
yeah.
awesome year
Oh, what
down
a
in
great
Houston.
year he had.
I mean, it's and these are young coaches. I mean, I played against D'Amico Ryan several times when he was in Philly, and so it's definitely exciting, and I think definitely motivating for myself and all young coaches and guys that are making that transition from playing to coaching.
That's great. I want to talk about D'Amico Ryan's a little bit and what CJ Stroud did this year, just from that coaching perspective. And I know you coach the other side of the ball, but when you have a young guy that comes into the league at 22 years old, is is there a magic potion to give that kid some confidence? Or is it just making sure you're simplifying the process for them so they can grow at their pace? Is Did you learn anything that about that this year, coaching some of those young guys you had?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think first off, you gotta be able to put them in a position that's advantageous to what they do well. But then at the same time, you gotta, you gotta, be able to, instill confidence. You gotta just ensure that they're playing fast. That's, from a defensive standpoint and an offensive standpoint. I mean, when you look at what Stroud did down in Houston this year, it's pretty remarkable given that a quarterback can come in and play the way that he did, learn a system the way that he did. And it's a real big tribute to not only him, as a player, to be able to learn and to be able to apply what he's being taught to the field in such a, magnificent way, but their coaching staff for being able to, like you said, simplify things, to be able to put things and put him in a position to succeed, and for him to utilize his God-given talents to, to in a company with what the offense is asking.
His composure was just there's nothing to explain it how you can be 21 years old, 22 years old, and have that composure. I mean, he had played big time football at Ohio State, but the speed at the NFL is just it's a hyperbole of what it is in college. To see that guy's exposure, there had to be some major coaching there to get him there.
Yeah, that certainly. I mean, I've known their offensive coordinator for many years, and so I know the bright football mind that he is, Bobby Slowick,
Yeah,
and he, so I know that, I know Stroud was in good hands with him as his coach. But then too, I mean, there's some things that as a coach, unfortunately, you can't teach. And that's it. I mean, you talk about composure, you talk about some of the off schedule plays he was able to make. I mean, some dudes just got it, and he certainly is one of those dudes. So you add that with the fact that he's being well coached. I mean, it's a good thing for the guys in Houston.
Really, really fun. That's great. What about you? When you came out of Purdue, you came out as an All-American. What was that transition like for you going from college guy to pro guy? You did so well really, really quickly as well.
I would say the biggest thing for me, it wasn't so much the speed, it was the strength and the skill level of guys. Because in college, there were some games where you were better than the guy that you were going against, and that was just kind of
Right.
the way it was. And but in the pros, it was like you were the very best player you saw in college. Like you were seeing that dude every single week in the NFL. And so it was like you couldn't rely on being bigger than this guy, being stronger, being faster all the time. You had to, learn how to be technically proficient. And so that first like season and a half where I had to really learn how to be technically proficient. That was good learning on the job learning for me, because I, kind of realize like I can't out athlete all these dudes. Like I'm going to have to, get better with my hands, be more precise with my hands, be more precise with my rush angle. And, cause otherwise I'm just not going to be successful. So it's definitely a learning curve. And, there's definitely, you realize why these dudes are in the pros.
What does the offensive line on your team do for you? Because I know you're battling every day, but is that offensive tackle for the Commanders, or are they going, hey, you need to do this better, or hey, watch me do this? Are they giving you lessons too? Are they helping you with your side of the ball, and are you doing the same thing for them?
Do you mean specifically now for me as a coach, or when I
Well,
was a
even
player?
even as a player, did you get that guidance from your offensive line that you're going up against every day and saying, "Hey, you keep doing this, you're going to keep making this mistake"? Were you getting that from them? Were you getting coaching from your teammates as much from your coaching staff?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I was really lucky. I mean, I got to go against Trent Williams a lot.
Right.
And while that was not very fun a lot of times, it was only going to make you better, because it was like, man, if I can beat this dude, or even hell, even come close to beating this dude, that's going to mean I'm beating this other guy I'm seeing in the game.
Right.
And Morgan Moses, another guy, really good right tackle for a long time. He's been with the Ravens the past couple of years, but it was me and him going head to head for 6-7 years here in Washington. And I know he made me a lot better, and he said I made him better. And we just knew that every time we lined up, it was on. We weren't gonna brother-in-law each other. We weren't gonna, we weren't. There was no, oh, it's practice, let's just get through it. It was, I'm trying to beat you. You're gonna try to beat me. Let's see what you got, man. And that was really good for both of us. And we were able to give each other good constructive feedback as well. So it was a good thing.
These guys are pros you're coaching. Do they get that when they step on the field, how important that is, that the toughest competition that you see that week is in practice, and not waiting for the game to see it? Do young guys get that?
That's something that we're trying to instill for sure. I mean, I've always been a believer that you got to like practice really hard and treat it like a game, because you want the game to be easy. You got to make the practice hard so the game is easy. And um and like I said, I've always been a big believer in that. And you gotta feel comfortable, moving at full speed at practice, so that you feel comfortable moving at full speed in the game, because you can't just jog through and get through a practice and then expect to be, fast twitch on game day. And so that's something I definitely try to instill in the guys is, these are valuable reps. Don't take these for granted. Don't just try to get through them. These are important.
That's great. I've got a young basketball player on my team. He's just huge. I mean, you should see this kid, Ryan. His name is Kafui Fiadanu, and he's 16 years old, and he looks like I can put him on an NFL field right now. He's got the body for it, but he's just this soft, kind kid, but he wants to play college football. Um, I know I'm bouncing all over the place here, but I want to go back to you being 16, 17 years old and recruiting a little bit. If you could go back and give that young guy, that young Ryan Kerrigan, some advice about their recruiting path, what would you tell him?
I would tell myself a couple things. I would say, one, really think about what you want to study in college. That's very important and something that, a lot of guys get to college and they're not sure what they want to do. So they end up, switching majors a couple times, which is unfortunately what I did. Now I ended up, graduating, but it's, I wish I would have given more thought, in high school to what I wanted to study in college. And I just was talking about that with my mom a couple weeks back. I wish I would have done that. But then when it comes to football specifically, I would just say take all the visits exhaust all your resources, take as many visits as you feel you need to take, and enjoy it. I mean, it was a really cool time. That was one thing I did do is I enjoyed the recruiting trips. I remember my dad and I, we'd have a Friday Night Lights football game at Muncie Central High School, wake up the next day, we'd all right, where are we going this weekend? And we drive up to Purdue, we drive up to Michigan, and it's like you're like watching, you're at Ross-Ade Stadium, you're at the shoe in Columbus, you're at the big house, and you kind of at times almost forget, like, oh, I'm here on a recruiting trip, because I was like,
Right.
I'm just at a football game with my
You're a
dad.
fan. Yeah.
And so enjoy it, because you will look back on those memories and be grateful for the fact that you did enjoy it. Because I know I enjoyed it, and I had fun doing them.
That's great advice. That's really good. I got a couple of guys that want to take those next steps, and I'm going to have them listen to this so they can hear. This is a guy that's done it all at the highest level, and he's still talking about that degree and that major, and making sure you're happy and making sure you're enjoying that process of getting recruited. Because it's for most kids, it's the only time you're ever going to get recruited in your life. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, the major thing is, I mean, that's real. I mean, you don't want to be in college and in classes that, and frankly, you're not doing anything to further your knowledge. You're just checking a box. You want to be in a class that you're passionate about, that you're passionate about, advancing in, and that's going to bring you a degree that's going to allow you to work and succeed like you want to, work and succeed post college. So I think that's, yeah.
And I love the fact that you didn't talk about the coach, you didn't talk about the legacy of the program. You talked about what you needed and what was healthy for you, and where you were going to find joy, right? Because you played for multiple coaches. You never knew whether the coach wasn't going to be there, right?
Right. And especially nowadays with how fluid, college athletics are, both players and coaches just moving all around. It's, you got to find what's going to, the situation that's going to allow you to maximize your mind and your physical prowess.
Yeah. I really appreciate your time, and I know you could be running to the hospital here in about 5 minutes. So I appreciate everything that you're doing, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this question. You played with a guy at Purdue by the name of Adam Brockman, and you lived with him for a while. And I just want a quick scouting report on this guy. And I want, and no fluff, I want a real scouting report on Adam Brockman.
I tell you, a real man's man. I mean, the guy, is a Ford Ranger throughout most of college. Then he upgraded to the Trailblazer, which was cool, but is like, the Ranger Danger was definitely more him. He had long hair, the beard, really, had a could headbang really well at the bar and at the frat party. But he and I had a hell of a time together, man. Yeah, he and I were like, you know, Dumb and Dumber going around campus together. He was like, we were like Harry and Lloyd, together. But I mean, that's an all-time guy, all-time dude. And it's he's, like I said, I'm very. That's one of the many reasons that I'm thankful to have had this football path, because it led me to people like Adam, allowed me to cross paths with him.
Well, you two are two peas out of the same pod. He wanted me to bring up that, you drove the same old truck because you loved it and you didn't need a new one all these years. and he wanted to know if you went into Chipotle and ordered some food, would you pay for the extra guac and the sauce on the side? He wanted me to ask you that.
I mean, it would be a thought. There would definitely be some indecision. Uh, Probably not, frankly.
And that's what makes you a good dude, man. You've lived the life that we all dreamed we could have done, and you've done it right, and you've done it with humility, and that's what's going to make you just an even better coach as you go through this process. So, Ryan, I'm so proud of you. I'm so excited for you and your family. I know you got number 4 coming real quick, and I can't wait to see what sideline you're going to be on next year. And I hope you continue to coach, because you're a bright star in this league, and you were a great player. And I know somebody's going to pick you up, and I look forward to cheering for you.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan. Good luck and best wishes, and enjoy those girls.
Will do. All right.
Wow, that was a lot of fun. What a great guy. My nephew and Ryan have been friends since their days playing football at Purdue. So it was a real joy for me to talk to Ryan, talk about his career, talk about the transition he's gone from player to coach, talk about balancing being a family man, a husband, and a dad, and now as a player, and now as a coach. So really great advice, great spirit, great energy, very thoughtful young man. And we talked about all those guys that he played against in his career that are now starting to get head coaching jobs in the NFL. And you can tell that he's really excited to be on the journey he's on as an NFL coach, and to have that opportunity to grow as a coach in the league. And as I'm recording this, he just got hired back by Dan Quinn, the new Washington Commanders head coach. So Ryan's going to continue to be on that staff, coaching that defensive line and those linebackers. And I'm really, really excited about his future. So hope you all had as much fun listening to that as I had with that conversation with Ryan. So thanks for everybody. Continue to listen. I hope you're enjoying these as much as I am. Got a great college head coach coming at you next week, next Friday. And I'll continue to bring great minds, great coaches, thoughtful leaders to you. And Ryan Kerrigan is definitely the epitome of that, a thoughtful leader, a significant leader. And I'm really happy that got to spend that time with him. If you want to continue to follow and listen, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, on all those podcast platforms. If you'd like to send me a message, you can send it to coachsignificance@gmail.com, or you can leave me a voicemail on the Apple and Spotify sites. We'll let you do that. And I'm happy to hear your thoughts and any questions you might have. But thank you for listening. I'll be back with you next Friday. Have a great, great week.